Powered by Sports Interaction, Canada Sportsbook.
Welcome to Game Over Montreal. We're jumping straight into the three-person view. We've got Lori Bennett here. We've got Marc Dumas. We've got lots to talk about. It's the Montreal Canadiens' final game of the season. The season is mercifully over. The last play of the season, I don't know if you guys noticed, was Brendan Gallagher frustratingly shooting a puck towards the boards, and he nearly clipped the referee, and immediately he was like, oh no, that's not what I meant to do.
The ref is like, yeah, it's great.
So good on Brendan for immediately going over and being like, I'm so sorry. Because, he doesn't need a worse reputation with the referees going into next year.
He's just started to heal it. Like, just started. Even then, you know what? He's only stopped making it worse, I would say.
Accurate.
Absolutely. But
all right,
before we get into it, I still want to remind Habs fans that never had a chance. If you want to see the best Habs interaction with a ref, go check out Eric Cole high-fiving a ref. Now
that's the best.
That was
awesome.
That's how you interact. And the ref did not like it.
No,
but it was fantastic. Fantastic.
No, he did not. That was like the highlight of that season, which was also an unintentional tanking season similar to last year. Got the Canadiens' Alex Galchenyuk. Lots to talk about tonight. First goal of his career for Lucas Condotta. First point for Joel Teasdale. That's super fun. Edmundson, again, I feel like we always have to talk about Joel Edmundson. Nick Suzuki ties Cole Caulfield for the team leading goals. And, Justin Barron did some stuff. It's fun stuff to talk about tonight. But before we get too deep into it, we got to tell you about Sports Interaction. Get in on the action and make your bet with Sports Interaction. Every hit, every shot, every goal. From your favorite teams or players, with competitive odds, the best live in-play, and more ways than ever to get into the game. Like Minute Madness, our exclusive game with so many opportunities to win by the minute. Download the app in Ontario, use the QR code you see at the bottom of the screen, or head to sportsinteraction.com/SDPN to get started. 19 plus, please play responsibly. And that will be the final time I read an ad on this show until, I guess, the Stanley Cup final. If Edmonton or Toronto or Winnipeg don't make it, we will have Game Over Stanley Cup final, just like we did last year. So we'll be there in some capacity or other. But lots to talk about tonight. Well, I'll start with you, Lori. I know it took an extra 36 games, but how do you feel about Nick Suzuki, finishing the season on a high?
I think he's been solid all season, in all honesty. I mean, he started like fire, obviously. He set us up to have higher expectations than I had before the first puck drop at the beginning of the season. And then, slowed down a bit, lost Caulfield. He's been playing with, everybody but my grandmother. And still he's managed to have a pretty solid, count at the end of the season. I love this kid. Love what he brings. Great to see him. I wanted him to top out at 71 points, but, he's still a solid showing for him.
Yeah, unfortunately, he couldn't manage a second point tonight because, as I put out on Twitter, if he would have managed to hit 67 points, that's actually Max Pacioretty's career high. I know he missed some games, but yeah, that's pretty impressive from 23-year-old Nick Suzuki playing.
So you're saying Max
top end
Pacioretty's
minutes.
Number was 67, his career high was 67, and the last time Leafs fans enjoyed any semblance of happiness was 67.
Did you see
numbers,
Adam Wilde talk? Did you see Adam Wilde talking about what a beer costs at what do they call their arena now? SBA, Scotiabank Arena.
Sure.
$67.
in taxes it costs $19.67 for one beer. Exactly, $19.67.
That's so unreasonable, and that's actually something. I mean, again, I'm sure it fell on deaf ears, but I brought it up back with a former employer. I won't tell you which, and they vehemently shut me down. And I brought up, not Arizona, but which is the football stadium. They're going to tell me right now it's the Mercedes football, Atlanta, I believe. They have the cheapest concessions in all of football, and they make more money than any other arena in the world. So there's a direct correlation within your prices. And anyways, it's just so unrealistic to expect a family to come in and have fun at games anymore. And that's kind of part of it. But we're not going to get negative. Keep your money for before a game and don't spend it on the water that they call beer at the game. That's the solution.
For sure.
Speaking of which, I can suggest some nice beers. It's been a long season, okay? I'm indulging tonight. I'm sorry.
No, I totally get it. It has been a long season, and I have to say, I thank you to everyone who's joined us here this season, all season long,
Amazing.
second season in a row, where there really hasn't been much to hope for, right? And to lose Caulfield 36 games ago, man, it's surprising that they've been able to entertain us
36 games ago?
36 games
in
ago.
the before times, yeah. I will say this, and I know we tend to go on and on about this, but when me and Andrew come up with our ideas or we're doing game planning, it's always, what can we do to make it cool for the chat, or how can we include the chat? Because we would have given up a long time ago if it wasn't for everyone in the community. So seriously, shout out to, I'm not going to start naming names. Hi, Claire. But seriously, we love you all and we really appreciate the support.
100%. And hey, if you really like us and want to support the show, you can just smash that like button there right below the video screen, and that helps the YouTube algorithm suggest us to other Canadiens fans or other hockey fans or sports fans in general, so that they can find this show when we're back next year, which, I mean, we'll do something for the draft lottery, of course.
We're going to have some fun this summer, but
we're going to do some fun stuff, but this is regular programming will be delayed until October.
Until further discretion. Yes, exactly. However, it will be an exciting offseason because there's going to be a lot that'll be happening with the Montreal Canadiens. Lori, first things first, Jonathan Drouin, do they bring him back?
No.
Okay, that was simple. That was good. Let's move on. Moving right on.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, I don't, not because I think they absolutely should not bring him back. It's not, I'm not one of the I feel for the player. I don't think it'd be a good idea for him, to be honest. If I were him, I'd want to move on, have a new start. And if, the Habs need to be looking at players that they can keep in the lineup. They've had a real issue with games lost to injury, and he doesn't scream, sturdy. He misses a few games to injury, and I think that needs to be a consideration for them in whatever that, aside from their core, whatever they're doing, bringing complementary players in the off season, that has to be a consideration. Who can they get games out of?
This is why we bring Lori on. Me and Andrew, when it's Drouin, I'm like, I just pull out my Kleenexes and I start to wax poetic about all the times he was nice to me. But you want the real smart analysis, we come down to Lori. Before I throw it back to Andrew, because this is his hosting, I just took over here. 5th lottery seed confirmed for the Montreal Canadiens. So they will have 8.5% odds of drafting first overall, 8.5% odds of drafting second overall. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and can I just say, like, I know everybody wanted to get the first overall pick this year, and there's still a very small chance that can happen. A semi-decent chance to get the second overall and grab Adam Fantilli, but you know what I'm looking forward to next season? Less of the absolute shit fit on Twitter from Habs fans every time somebody on the Montreal Canadiens scores a goal. Like, oh, they're ruining the lottery.
I had to block another regular, which I interact with a lot of fans, but man, today was just so annoying. How they're like, yeah, well, not even an NHL player, buddy. Let's be perfectly honest. Your name is Habs420 sex bot Bitcoin on Twitter. Like, you have no business insulting Alex Belzil. You would go to Saint Eloi, 280 people, you'd be the 281st best hockey player. So please, guys, and ladies and gentlemen, have a little bit of respect for the people that are the 1% of the best players in the world.
And like, as much as, yes, this game is very, very meaningless in the overall scheme of things in the Canadiens rebuild, right? Like, losing it is a better option than winning it. But like, this game is also possibly the highlight of Lucas Condotta's life, right? Like, he may never get this chance again. So I think I can't tell anybody how to enjoy watching the game, but if you don't have any capacity for enjoying the little moments, even when a team is rebuilding and like the benefit is in losing, I feel like you're not actually enjoying, and maybe just disengage while the rebuild is going on and come back when they're better. Like, it just seems like it's not healthy for you. That's all.
Or perhaps at least don't insult everyone else who's not having the same cow with a 5th versus a 6th place finish.
Lori is our game over host for next year because she makes so much sense. You can, if you please, invite us back, but that's what it is. I always say it one way: there's no way to be a bad fan until you tell someone else, like, hey man, you can't enjoy what you're watching. You kind of lost the plot there. However, there's been so many cool stories this year.
Yeah.
And Lucas Condada, like Andrew said, like this is a guy that would never thought he'd have this opportunity. Now he's going to be able to talk. Like there's more to the game than just a draft lottery. And if you can't see that human side of it, that's what why sports are so beautiful. That's why when Carey Price showed up tonight, people went wild. When Nick Suzuki got that goal, people went wild. You know, when Rem Pitlick kind of lost his mind a little bit and decided to go a little wonky, people went wild because that sports are drama, and the human element is so important.
Yeah, it really is. And I don't want to spend any more time,
No.
like trashing fans, because like frankly the fans are why we have this show. But I want everyone to take a deep breath. The season's over. You don't have to worry about it anymore. It's okay. The tank is done. Next year it's very unlikely that they'll be bad enough to be competing for first overall. So you don't have to worry about that anymore.
We'll talk about that in our mid summer stream. Yeah. It'll be a Midsummer Nights stream. Get it? Because
don't that's content that maybe would be banned on YouTube.
Right? We get a copyright claim for Sir Shakespeare, who by the way was a bit of a hack, but we can get into that in a whole other debate. Voltaire for life, what can I say?
I did want to say a special welcome to, I'm going to go up the chat here, Isabel Manu, who it took 164 games to finally catch us live. She's here now. Isabel,
the Victor Mete route. She took the Victor Mete route. It took 164 games to get the first, but now they're going to start rolling.
Now she's all in. All right, this isn't necessarily a positive or a negative, but a guy who's kind of shown up big in the last couple of games here and, took some demotions, didn't ever complain, is signed into next year. Does Rem Pitlick have a space on this team, or is he just straight up sent to Laval next year?
That's a tough one. I think there's a couple of guys that they're tough ones. Mm-hmm. For me, there's a couple of names that are surprisingly tougher than I thought. I think Pitlick is one of those names. I think Gurianov is one of those names. I'm not sure if he's back or not. Here I'm gonna go stronger than that. I'm not sure Jake Evans is back.
Hey.
I love Jake Evans. I love his path. I love that he paid his dues at every level, and he worked his ass off.
You're being realistic.
Yeah. But realistically, he did not have a strong season. He's not one of those, durable players that the Habs desperately need. And depending on what else happens in terms of who's signed and who sticks around, I'm not sure. I mean, certainly he's picked up his game in the last few games. But early, he's been better since he came back from injury, I would say, than before he was injured. But, he's had some significant injuries. I'm not certain about it, but sure he's there. And then, of course, there's all the guys that we hope they find a new place for. But those are some guys that I think are meaningful for the team, but aren't necessarily going to be good enough.
Yeah, I would say one thing that plays in Rem Pitlick and Jake Evans' favor is that they're very much not expensive, right? Sure. And I think for a team that wants to weaponize cap space in the summer, Kent Hughes was on the broadcast for TSN. I don't know if he went on I'm assuming he went on RDS as well tonight. Yeah. He mentioned again the idea of not being afraid to shake things up and move players or acquire players if he finds a fit for this organization. It might not be right away. I think on the last show, Marc and I mentioned Damon Severson as a possibility on the right side. I talked to a friend today and said that they said that Damon Severson really does not want to go in a hot market. He wants to be in a quieter spot. So maybe that one won't special, work.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe he isn't the guy that they need to chase, but yeah, Lee Otter says maybe Owen Beck takes Jake Evans' role next year. I think what we need to look at with Owen Beck is he may be NHL ready right now, but it probably isn't going to hurt him to play another year junior, especially with how his season was disrupted by the trade to Peterborough. If Peterborough can figure out their stuff, because they were
by the way, real quick update. Peterborough swept their first round, which is crazy. No one was expecting it. And Owen Beck's going to be facing Vincent Rohrer in the second round. Now, Beck, real quick, to talk about what Andrew said, he found his rhythm at the end of the season. 10 points in his last 11 games. He has 3 points in 4 games. So playing much better, but everything Andrew's saying makes sense here. You want to defer that contract for the future, right?
Yeah. I think you see Beck, if anything, joining, depending on where he's playing next year. I think he does go back to the OHL. I actually wonder if Monahan or someone like him is in the role until the deadline sort of thing and is placeholding a bit for Beck. I don't think they're gonna, when the trade was made to Peterborough, there was a lot of talk around these circles that Mississauga wasn't expecting Beck to be available to them next year. I'm not sure. I mean, that's a theory.
That's exactly what they said.
Yeah.
I confirmed it with Owen as well, and he's like, yeah, and he was pumped about it, but there's no way that you're giving up all those picks for 30 games of Owen Beck if that you're selling them at that point for 30 games of Beck. Yeah.
So we'll see what happens, but I don't think some more seasoning will hurt him. I think that fans have gotten a little bit carried away with the number of young players that have been in the lineup this year, and that were there out of necessity. The plan was never to play a bunch of young defensemen, and they did well. But let's not pretend that it worked. We're talking about a draft lottery.
They survived. They survived.
I think that the biggest takeaway from all the young defensemen is that the Canadiens actually allowed fewer goals than last year.
Did they?
Yeah. I'm looking at, they allowed, after tonight, I think they're at 307, and last year they were at 319.
There were a lot
so
of
not
whoppers last
too
year.
many fewer, but fewer.
However, I do believe overall their expected goals for, their Corsi for, their every single metric went down this year, which was to be expected, right? But
of course.
as Lori mentions very intelligently, once again, the smartest person on the panel, which we never thought there was any kind of doubt. The rookies they did good considering. It's kind of when you see a big guy, like remember with Mike McCarron, like he skates really well. You're like, yeah. And then they say for a
big guy.
Yeah, exactly. So Lori said, they did really well for a bottom 5 team. Yeah, agreed.
Right.
Yeah, everything is grading on a scale, right?
Relative.
And
all relative. Yeah.
Like relative to expectations, and like we mentioned that a lot of the underlying numbers were better last year. Like I remember when Marty St. Louis took over before the trade deadline, when they still had Toffoli, still had Lehkonen, the team all of a sudden was like running on like 54% expected goals for like a good stretch there.
Yeah.
And I was like, what the hell is happening here? Then they traded away Toffoli and traded away Lehkonen, and everything came out.
But the biggest issue here is that sorry, go ahead, Andrew. No, that's the end of my thought. I was going to say that for him to get back to that 54%, and we saw it today when Mike Matheson got injured. Mike Matheson is the key to playing Martin St. Louis style hockey, right? And like I think that was one of the biggest, I guess not revelations this year, was that Mike Matheson and Martin St. Louis, like best friends, best friends forever. So I want to see the Canadiens maybe find some help for Mike Matheson, and maybe find someone else that can help in transition. Because Lori, as well as I do, when Kirby Dach was in the lineup, the Habs were healthy in transition. When Sean Monahan was in the lineup, the Habs were healthy in transition. Without them, there's not much Nick Suzuki can do, because he becomes Jon Snow in Game of Thrones, facing that whole horde of horsemen. So I think that's a priority right now, off season, is you look to go get a Matheson-esque, which is going to be impossible to find, but someone that can help in transition, I think, is the priority for the Canadiens.
Yeah,
for sure. I'm not sure who that's going to look like. I wonder if I think a lot depends on where they, Hughes said tonight, we have to wait for the draft lottery. We need to see where we're picking. So I think that's a question of, are we picking Fantilli, or are we picking later and picking maybe the top defenseman in the draft, who happens to be a right-handed shot, and we see him joining the team in a couple of years. And I think what that, depending on what that looks like, it won't shock me to see them go out and land, a veteran who's younger than Savard and younger than, well, I was going to say younger than Edmundson, but Edmundson is like an old soul. He's only 21 or something.
He's 122 years old in back years. They translate as dog years. He's yeah. But we'll get to it. But shout out to him tonight, man. That was good on Bill Edmundson.
I love the left-handed jabs in between the big swings.
Oh man, he kind of like dodged the first two punches on that fight.
Oh
yeah, he did. It was a big punch. Like, that was, for a first punch in a hockey fight, I'm surprised he didn't fall down. Do the old PK where you throw all your weight into the one punch, hoping to like Superman the guy to the ground
with
Marchand.
Marchand. Yeah, that was hilarious. PK just like I swear to God, he like cartoonishly like loaded up like this, and
but I will say, Joel Edmundson, like, I got to give him props for taking that fight in the first place, because we know he's been hurt.
He's broken right now. Yeah, that was tough of him.
But I think it was the Bruins' second goal. How many times can one guy get beat on one play?
3.
It was a lot. It was a lot of times that he got beat on that play, and it's every game with him. And I just wonder, like, I don't think you can bring him in next season. Like, how many times have we talked about the young rookies, and like maybe one of them starts in the American Hockey League? But even with that,
no, I think
doesn't make sense.
Gone. I think this was his last game in Montreal.
I just don't see anyone offering
make it happen.
Like, yeah.
But they're not going to get a big return for him, but I think that was his last game.
I got burned in the chat again, which has been a bit of a theme this year. And Kay's like, "Oh, really, Mark? An NHL team wants someone that's good in transition?" Like, yeah, okay, I get it. Like, yeah. Also, guys that score goals. I'm hearing NHL teams the Habs really need some of those.
I hear they pay for that. Gianni B asks, is Drouin sticking around? We talked about that earlier. I think we're all unanimous that it's not going to happen. It's better for him to move on somewhere else. Simon
Vince
Laramie
Dunn.
says, do you think Vince Dunn could be an option? Vince Dunn's a great player.
Did they let him go? Like,
I don't think so. And also, I think he will be too expensive for what the Canadiens want to do. Like, we talked about Damon Severson being basically like a 6.5 type guy. I don't think at this stage,
Montreal, $8 million.
Yeah, like, I don't think Kent Hughes is pushing for like a $7 to $8 million defenseman, which is what Vince Dunn's been this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, and shout out to Kat. There's another Kat in our chat. So we got double Kat. We got the hit Kat. Oh my God, I'm so tired. Big fan of Jonathan Kovacevic. So we might have to give. It's great today that David Savard. I was going to say André Savard for some reason, but David Savard. David Savard won the Jacques Beauchamp Award. Jonathan Kovacevic could have easily won that. Like, I know he's not as chummy with the media, but if we're being honest, like, the bare bones of the award, Jonathan Kovacevic probably deserves it. But I'm not going to get into another fight about awards with Montreal media. That's just not something that's on my plate today.
Does the media pick that one?
Yeah.
Jacques Beauchamp? Yeah.
Yeah, well, they essentially, while we're in the middle of scarfing down hot dogs, they put little slips of paper on our sheet. Like, one year I just loaded the ballot for Paul Byron, because like, that was it. Like, I don't care. He's winning, whereas other people were like, oh, mate, what was the guy before Noah Juleson that had that long hair? Brett Lernout. They're like, oh, yeah. I'm like, no, shut up. Brett Lernout does not get a vote. You put Paul Byron on your paper. Yeah.
Brett Lernout gives me PTSD. I told this story on the show last year, but like multiple times.
When he missed the top 25?
No, when I was at that draft. That was the first draft that I ever covered as a writer, where I had press credentials, and I was sitting there with Travis Hughes, and who was at that point the head of hockey at SB Nation, which no longer exists, sadly. And the Canadiens made a trade, and they traded up in, I believe it was the third round. And I was like, they're taking Braden Point. Undersized guy, crazy point production.
It's a Trevor Timmins pick.
Trevor Timmins loves doing this. I was 100% confident. I was like, yes, the Montreal Canadiens are taking Braden Point. This is a fantastic pick. And they go out and they pick Brett Lernout, who nobody had ever heard. He was like 80 spots lower on the draft board. Oh, the Montreal Canadiens. They give and they take.
Yeah, I mean, to whoever it was that said, don't all the teams want players?
It was Kay that was Kay was roasting me again. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's true, but perhaps we could draw to mind the Marc Bergevin years, where that wasn't really all that big a priority. It was, so.
Bergevin inherited talent, right? So at this point, it's basically insulating our talent. I will say this: Bergevin left the team in decent shape. I know a lot of people are going to be angry about that, but he didn't destroy the cupboards and leave them with nothing.
In terms of prospects, he did. I mean, what we're seeing is his in that regard. We're also seeing a ton of shitty contracts.
Yes, this is also the NHL roster.
Did you ever
terrible?
you ever see the picture of the pyramids of Giza when it's looking out towards the desert? And you're like, that's so nice. But then they turn it around and there's a Taco Bell right in the background like that. Yeah, that's the Marc Bergevin. Like,
Yeah, I mean, and I feel like he finally stocked the cupboards when he was forced to. When I felt like it was against his will to do it. But that said, they did it well. There's some solid talent there that was inherited for sure.
Yeah, that is very true. I mean, they finally got some decent picks as well as they started missing the playoffs year after year.
Yeah.
And also Carey Price in their prime. Let's be honest, that is like just the biggest wasted gift since maybe Ohtani, like in playing baseball right now, other than him, Carey Price. But it was cool seeing him tonight. That's fun. That's cool to see him around.
It was. Kay mentions in the chat that Kovacevic played the second most game for the Canadiens this year at 77, and I believe the only times that he missed were healthy scratches as they were rotating in the rookie D. So yeah, I don't think he got hurt this year at all. I think he was like Nick Suzuki, the only guy who stayed healthy. So good on him. He's underratedly a big dude too. Hey, like I don't think people realize like he is a big defenseman.
He's a big man, and he can move, and he's been solid. I like his game a lot. Yeah, I mean, I've heard some talking about him possibly being offloaded in the summer. I don't see the benefit of that at all.
Me either.
He's cheap. Absolutely. He's reliable. He's played really well. He's someone who can throw in. He's going to do what he did this year without any grief. Why would you even entertain it? I think he's back for sure.
On the theme
and he's cheap for 2 more years.
Yes. He's year one. Yeah, no. Yeah. And they did all the development. The Habs are just reaping the rewards. And you know what? Worst case, and this is going to sound harsh, he is a movable. Like you can, if someone better comes along, you move it along.
For sure.
To keep the theme of me getting roasted in the chat. Soijiro B mentions, hey Mark, I missed the episode the other night, but I wanted to say Bossy is definitely behind Mario for the goal scoring, and it's quantifiable. I went back and I looked, and Mario by far. Like I don't know why, because I've been such a Mario booster, but that was the first thing I went and I looked, and yes, I was wrong. However, Bossy, in that respect, I think what I originally said was top 3, right? And he does fall top 3 error adjusted, so that is good as well. I just love that someone waited an entire episode to be like, well, now that everyone else told you you're wrong, I also have a reason why you're wrong. So let's keep that going. I like it.
I believe Mario Lemieux before his last couple seasons where he was dealing with all that too, but also like before his heart started to give out on him, he had like again a bunch of injury issues. He was the highest like per game goal scorer in NHL history, and now it's back to Gretzky, and I don't know if Bossy's right there with him, but he's close.
Oh, and those teams, Mario, at the end were just like he was going on the ice to save the franchise because he owned it. Yeah. That was the main reason.
Yeah.
And hey, we're for the first time since 05-06, Sidney Crosby's not in the playoffs. The Pittsburgh Penguins are not in the playoffs. I saw our friend of the show, Tony Ferrari, tweeted last night that the last time the Penguins were out of the playoffs, the number 1 song in the U.S. was by Daniel Powder. Do you remember that?
No.
Gnarls Barkley was the big summer jam.
Did you ever see, there's a tweet recently, like, I'm so old that Celebrity News is like, Swim Glamour hits a big schwoot with a Vickelwag. And I'm like, I have no idea what any of those words mean. So, no, I can honestly say I never heard any of the words you just pronounced. Lori, how about you? Are you a little more hip than I am? Because
I'm older than you, Mark.
I don't know about that. But did you own Bad by Michael Jackson on vinyl?
I owned Paradise by the Dashboard Light by Meatloaf on vinyl.
I acquiesce. I will acquiesce. Absolutely.
On a 45.
On a 45. Okay. Well, yeah, fair enough.
But I have older siblings.
As per usual, Lori is the winner. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and Sojiro says, for the record, there's nothing wrong with being behind Mario Lemieux. Yep. If you ever want to have fun, like your brain just breaking, look up Mario Lemieux's final junior season. And then when you're done freaking out about his point production in the regular season, look at his goal production in the playoffs and try to imagine playing against him.
Right? Oh, the best clip ever, and I can go maybe show it, is when Jagr came in as a young, from Czechoslovakia there, where he came in from. They're going around just in circles against Chicago in the playoffs. Now, one thing that was so apparent in that clip was that as soon as they got Ed Belfour out of there, who's also very good, they put in this young guy called Dominic Hasek. That's who it is. And all of a sudden, Mario gets a breakaway, and he goes to an easy goal for Mario, goes to lift it. And the last second, Hasek whips his pad up. And Mario looks back and I'm like, who the hell are you? So it's just kind of a funny, I'm going to try to find that clip, but I watched it one morning and the other team didn't touch the puck for, like, it was just the fact of having that much talent on the team. Also, Ron Francis ended up being on that line. Like, that is, man. I think they finished 1, 2, 3 a few years as well. Like, maybe even 2 years or I don't know.
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous what the Penguins have had and continue to have. Really, the Stars didn't let them down this year. It was the rest of the lineup. But back to the Montreal Canadiens. Almost
every game, man. That's big. That's big for the Penguins.
It is. I will say, we talked about guys who are kind of tough decisions, right? And I think there's a subsection of fans that really likes Rem Pitlick. I'm not among them. I recognize that he seems to be a good soldier, but I think he's just not a great NHLer. But my mind has been changed a little bit on like NHLer status for Michael Pezzetta. I'm not sure if he has a spot on this team next year, though. Do you guys see Michael Pezzetta as a guy who can be like 13th, 14th forward or stick around on the fourth line? Or is he a guy who finds greener pastures in the summer?
I think he's a 13-14 in Montreal.
Yeah.
So I don't know if the pastures get greener for Pezzetta, in all honesty. He's very likable and he knows who he is. So you're not going to get any fuss from him. But if he finds greener pastures, best wishes to him. But I don't even see him being in top 12 in Montreal. So on a team that just finished in a lottery pick position. So
I just love the saying greener pastures because it's like, where shall this cow graze? That's literally what it meant back in the day. Back in my day with the farms. I'll say this, qualifying offers super cheap and you're getting 7 to 8 goals on the fourth line on a team that is anemic offensively. There's some value there. Now, that being said, I would actually prefer a guy like Belzile in that role. And the reason I say that is because you don't have to worry about taking Belzile out of the lineup. You don't have to worry about him complaining. You don't have to worry about ruining his development. You don't have to worry about sending him to Laval. So I see that 13th position definitely locked up for Alex Belzile. And also, let's be perfectly honest, skill-wise, he's better. Pezzetta got a little redundant with Jack-Eye as well. That being said, man, he's a good dude. I like him just because he's a good dude, but I don't see.
Yeah, I mean, he got redundant with Jack-Eye if you're thinking about the physical piece, but I think they could sign me and he could be redundant. I can make him redundant.
Lori can chuck him. You don't know this, but like
he's not great in that role. Like he'll take the fight, but like I feel for him every time because I know he's getting clobbered. Solid 75% of the time he's getting clobbered.
He's got the old, like, I was just gonna make the exact same reference, Tom the Bomb.
Yeah,
he'll always take the fight, but it doesn't work out so well.
Yeah.
He's surprised a few people this year, but I feel like it's better off when Pezzetta doesn't have to fight, where he can just play tough kind of thing. And I think his game took off after Belzile got called up. And
they brought
now with Belzile out of the lineup,
they brought that
Pezzetta's still doing
intensity.
Yeah, and like Pezzetta's still making good plays without Belzile in the lineup, so he's taken that to heart, I guess, and pushed himself to be more than just a mucker, right? Like he was huge. He did get an assist on the Condata goal. Like he was the one who made that happen by sticking with the play off the zone entry, and then he finished Rem Pitlick trying his very hardest to tank by passing 3 inches in front of an empty goal.
I'm just thinking, but like Pezzetta was essentially on pace to score about the same as Armia for 750K. So yeah, it's starting to get a little, but I don't like the idea of having the fourth line open for prospects like that. I hate that idea. I actually love having just a good fourth line that you're not worried about promoting and you're not worried about demoting, if they do. So I don't think, I think for Pezzetta, for his career, he probably moves on. But let's be honest, man, 7 goals, or like he's actually prorated to about 9 in the last 2 years. That's not bad on the Canadiens' fourth line, especially considering it's a bad team.
Yeah, AD in the chat says the Habs need another fighter. Can't only have Jacques Guy. He needs to play actual hockey.
I agree so much.
Here's the thing. I agree that Jacques Guy needs to play actual hockey, but you don't need another fighter.
No,
not in today's game.
No.
It's just redundant. The
There's
only
3
reason
fighters
why
in the entire NHL, like let's be...
right, like all the teams that have dedicated fighters, guys like Nick Delorier, are all bad teams, right? Like you just don't need to prepare for that. It's not. Outside of rebuilding, it doesn't really have a place in the game anymore.
There's 5 guys that fight each other all the time. That's it.
Pretty much.
I'd rather see them have a couple of guys who aren't there to fight, but don't need somebody else to fight for them.
Yeah.
If have a handful of guys,
yes.
Maybe a handful's too many, but a few guys there who can hold their own if they have to.
That team toughness.
Right. They're not out looking for a fight. And, we saw it from Doc a while back. I was quite surprised at how well he held up in a fight. I don't want to see him do that very often, but I was happy to see him do it that night and thought, good on you that you were able to stand up for yourself and somebody else is not having to come in and do it. And that's not to criticize, the smaller players or the highly skilled players that you want being defended, but it would be nice for the Habs to have a few guys that could just hold their own in that space.
Yeah, I think Kirby Dach
having to go every other night,
Right. I think Kirby Dach surprises people because he kind of looks like he has slight shoulders for being a big guy.
Yeah.
But you watch him along the boards and like the power that he has in his lower body is incredible, and that's going to surprise guys. Like, I don't think people realize how much of fighting is lower body strength and balance.
And
when
all
you got
core,
that,
it's all your feet, all your legs,
exactly. Like Doc, when he took that fight, he was surprisingly mean. I didn't think he had that level in him, but he was mad.
Once in a while, he realizes he has like Clifford the dog size strength, and he just like goes wild. But I remember texting one of one of his old coaches that actually worked with Tim, and I'm like, man, this guy gets angry once in a while, and he's like, well, what we always said that if he really wanted, he could make good money hunting birds with a rake. He could just sit on top of a mountain and just like nail them with a rake. And I was like, what the hell does that actually mean? They're like, well, if he wants to get angry, he can get angry. That was hockey code for whatever. Yeah, for saying that. Maya,
some of the metaphors they come up with. What the
just
hell
the
is
best.
that?
Oh, nothing. But sometimes I start a sentence and I don't really know where I'm gonna. Shout out to Maya here saying that we have a great future with Cole Caulfield. Yeah. The funny thing here is that you're looking at a guy next year, Cole Caulfield, that is probably going to be on pace for 40 goals. And man, that changes the whole complexion of the Montreal Canadiens if you have another talented player like Doc that you can bring in that's good in transition. But I'll say this, Lori, I want to see Suzuki and Caulfield separated. The chat's about to roast me, and I get that, and they're already doing it. But do you see them being together like forever?
So I see. How I see the top 6, how I want the Habs top 6 to look is that there's no permanent lines ever. That they're interchangeable. That we don't have to see a center right wing combination and some plug who can win the board battles for them, and that's the 3 you got to roll with, or you spontaneously combust. Like I want to see a top 6 that is interchangeable and yeah, sometimes it'll be Suzuki and Caulfield, and sometimes it will be Doc and Caulfield.
Yes, that's the one I want to see. That's one the chat wants to see. Caulfield and Doc. Ooh, that's a good combo.
I think it could work. I would have, they would be in my starting line. Suzuki and Caulfield would start together with Dubois on their left wing, but yeah, I don't see that, and I see more than 2 centers in your top 6. I want to see that ability in the top 6. I want to see less positional play and more skilled play that's feeding off each other, and able to be more. I want to see where we don't have a cow. It's Suzuki's not playing center tonight. Oh, that'd be a big deal.
I want to see Lori take a job as an assistant coach for the Montreal Canadiens. Yeah. Like, hey, Alex,
pay, Marc?
Alex, I know you've been done good, but Laval needs her help there. We're just going to bring in Lori here real quick. And she's smarter than everyone.
It's all good in theory, right? But making it happen is another thing. But yeah, that's, so I'm not bent out of shape by separating them. But I don't see any permanent duos or trios. I think in a good lineup, you don't have to do that.
No. Yeah.
With that said, Lori, can you give us your full Montreal Canadiens starting lineup for next year?
So 4 lines.
4 lines, 3 defense
4 lines.
pairings.
Well, really 9 lines if we're gonna do like this year.
We gotta account for injuries. So
get
73 players, please.
So my top line is Dubois, Suzuki, Caulfield.
She's got Drouin on the lineup already too, man. You guys are way ahead of me right off the bat. That's good.
I think it's a done deal. Whether it's this year or next, I think it's happening this summer. I don't know. Like maybe I'm losing my mind, but it starts to feel like it's done. My second line is Fantilli, Doc, Gallagher.
Oh.
We're having a very good summer in my world.
And that's not they didn't even draft Fantilli. They traded for him on top of the other guy that they drafted. This is how
yeah, I mean, and so if Fantilli, if it's not Fantilli and it's someone else, then maybe they're trading or they're signing someone like Max Pacioretty as a placeholder for, while they wait for Will Smith to get ready or something like that. But I've got Gallagher put on that line. I don't think he's top sixer anymore, but I like the idea of having the veteran there and having, and having that look. You get Heineman, Monahan, and Slafkovsky as the third line.
Oh, you're bringing back Monahan, right? Yeah.
Well, I've got an asterisk by him because I think it's going to be Monahan or someone like him. I wish it was someone a little bit more durable.
But they have to. You're right. They need someone that's good. Sorry, Kay, to point out the obvious here, but they need someone that's good in transition. They have to. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think Heineman's ready. I thought he was ready, to be honest, last fall.
Really? Wow.
I think that he was, my description of it was that he was closest to ready for what they need him to do. I don't think he's going to be a top 6 player, and I think he was closest to ready for the bottom 6 role that he's going to fill. And I think he's a year readier, obviously.
Lori, do you want to hear what my call was when Heineman was coming over? I said, don't expect much from him in Laval. He's had a very long year. If he
comes in and scores,
if he gets more than half a point per game, I will be surprised. This is why they pay me the big bucks.
He plays big. He is big, and he plays big. And I think he's built for the North American game. But he's also got a wicked shot. And there's
an NHL shot, yeah. And the Habs need shooting talent.
Yeah, I like that possibility there. I like the idea of him on a line with Slafkovsky.
Yeah,
because I think he has a little more. I think there's some stuff that's
so he's your Guryanov on the third line, essentially. He's your shooting talent on the third line.
So Guryanov I have on the fourth line.
Oh,
that's debatable for me.
Just all the shooting talent. I like this.
With Evans and Harvey Pinard. So
that's a waste of Harvey Pinard, though, isn't it?
Nope.
No.
just no, Marc.
The thing we do in Montreal fandom is that if we get a player we like who can play well, then surely to Jesus he must be a top 6 forward. He's perfectly built. He's not a fourth line player, but he's perfectly built for a third line in my view.
This is an ideal scenario as well, right? So yeah, absolutely.
For sure.
Yeah. Okay.
But all of those lines, of course, means that the only 2 players that are coming up from Laval are Harvey Pinard and Heineman. And I think that's about right, to be honest. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if he's still around. We talked about earlier. I see Beck going back to the OHL and Monahan or someone like him being traded at the deadline, and then see what happens at Beck's season. And I have gone from that group: Josh Anderson, Jonathan Drouin, Mike Hoffman, Christian Dvorak, and Yoel Armia. Do I think all of that's doable? That's a big summer for you. So, but which of those guys? I mean, Fantilli and Dubois is a bit of a reach, and who knows if that's happening. But those guys that I have leaving, out of them, the only one that I'd really have a lot of interest in returning is maybe Anderson. Until they get the perfect deal for him, and who knows? So
they're mentioning in the chat here, okay, so Sean Farrell's in the AHL in your scenario?
100%.
Good, I agree. That is very much a bigger greed. Although I thought he was good yesterday, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's good. I don't think he's ready. I think he's in the AHL next year and perhaps beyond. I don't think he's close to
Joshua Roy?
So file him under the category of just because a bunch of defensemen survived in the NHL this year doesn't mean we need to do it to the forward group next.
I like that.
I think that there's a bunch of guys that, I hear people talking about that kid Mayu coming and playing on defense next year.
He's not NHL ready, not even remotely close.
Absolutely not, unless he has some major transformation over the summer. I don't see it. I'm going to see him tomorrow night, him and Mishar in the playoff game, and I'll have an in-person look at it. But for me, there's just been an overestimation based on a bunch of defensemen surviving this year. We loved Goalie. Look at his numbers. He survived this year, and that's okay. That's where they are in their development. They'll get better. It's not a knock on them, but there's no need to rush these kids. So I see all of those guys, Kidney and
I see Lori as an assistant GM at this point. I just bumped her up from coach to assistant GM.
Getting promoted by the minute.
Yeah, because she also got rid of.
I'm ready for Molson's pay grade, if that's all right.
Oof, yeah.
I'm ready to retire on somebody else's.
For sure.
And on defense, I don't have terribly different, to be honest. I think Mass and Barron starts as a pair.
I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah, Goalie Savard, unfortunately.
Goalie's a bird?
Goalie Savard.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You're gonna do that to Goalie for a second year, Lori?
Yeah.
Also, man, give the guy a break. Like he's just...
I hope they don't. I hope they don't. I hope there's an upgrade there. But
Lori is the drowning meme, when they're like, I need help, and then they're like, yeah, high five, Savard, one more year. Here we go.
Well, I think it's possible that they do draft that kid whose name is escaping me at the moment. Reinbecker, is it?
Yeah, Reinbecker. Yes.
Yeah.
He's about looking at about 8 to 10 right now, but a lot of people have complained about it, and I get it. It's just that in transition, he's actually pretty decent. He's actually elevated his game to better to where Goalie was at his draft here, in my opinion.
And so how long before he's NHL ready?
A while.
3 to 4 years. Realistically, 5 to 6 if we're being perfectly honest. Because again, this year was an aberration and they just survived.
Yeah, it's true. So I think it's possible that Savard is there for a while yet to act as a placeholder. But depending on where they see, who they see come and when, maybe they add someone like Severson is the guy, of course, that comes to mind because I think he's that perfect fit in that middle group. If he's not interested in playing in Montreal, I get that. And I have Harris, Jackeye, and Kovacevic who are, filling out that bottom pair. And Edmundson gone, Weidman being 8, Laval are gone, and perhaps Savard is upgraded.
Although a Savard Goalie second pairing would be a lot different than a Savard Goalie or Goalie's a bird top pairing, right? Like it would be a significant difference because you're not facing the top competition. You're a little more sheltered.
You would hope so,
yeah,
for sure.
You would hope so. Yeah, second pairing on the Habs is still pretty rough there.
he wasn't close to ready for that, and people screaming how great he was all year. Yeah, he looked good in considering what he had to deal with. But I actually thought, is this? I think he's confident enough and settled himself enough that it wouldn't hurt him. But it's just he had a rough year, and as did a few of them, but in different ways. Like I don't feel like Harris struggled in the way the Goalie did. He wasn't given the same responsibility in some ways, right? So
he is losing it right now, just losing it in our chat right now. She's just
who's that?
Kay, she's the empress of Goalie Nation, so we gotta respect our loyals. What the chat is saying though is that they really like the Barron Matheson combo, and I like that too. But the only thing I would say, and I think Andrew mentioned it yesterday, a lot of chaos on that pairing.
Yep. There would be, and I would like to see Barron's defensive game pick it up a little bit, but honestly, I think the ideal situation would probably be someone a little more defensively sound for Barron, or someone less like himself, I guess. In terms of being inclined to take the puck and go.
Goalie.
But I like the idea of the two of them together, and I think more importantly than me liking it, I think that I get the impression that the coach might like it a bit. So, but I think it depends on who comes in this summer. I think there's also a possibility that Goalie Barron might actually be a decent pair.
That was my pick.
Yeah,
was Goalie and Barron together.
Well, I put Goalie on the third pairing with Jack-Eye, so I mean, like I'm the worst out of all three. We all knew that beforehand, but yeah, I'd like to see Goalie play with no pressure, get what a rookie would usually get.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because I called it yesterday, Lori. It was a baptism by wolves. So not just baptism by fire. It was a baptism by wolves, you know? So yeah, I'd like to see Goalie get a little bit of an easier go at.
Yeah, I mean, there's no criticism of him, none whatsoever. He was thrown overboard with an anchor in his arms, you know, and didn't drown. You know, but he took in a lot of water. You know, he swallowed a lot of sea.
That's the Habs this year. They survived.
Yeah, and
is the best situation for Goalie to play with the chaos of Mike Matheson to prepare him to be on the right side with Lane Hudson?
Galaxy braining it. He's just going
thinking too far ahead.
Well, they actually they're criticizing me for not trading a goalie in the chat. So, Lori, which goalie are we trading? Is it Allen or is it Dobish? Is it Primo or who? All of them. Do we trade all of them?
I'm trading Allen. I'm not sure that Hughes is trading Allen. I next year.
Why though? And I get it, but why not?
He's got 2 years left though. He's just started his extension. He's not moving.
Yeah, I think honestly, I think they made him a bit too expensive. For the quality of play that he's bringing right now. No one's trading for him as a starter, I don't think, and as a backup. I guess if they have a young goalie and they're looking for a solid, 30-game goalie to play with them, perhaps that would be appealing to a team. I'm not sure. I haven't thought about who that might be, but yeah, I like Allen a lot. I think he brings a lot in leadership that we don't necessarily see. That
really does. He really does.
That's really important for Hughes, and I would get the decision to keep him 100%. But I don't know. Are they prepared to with what they've seen of Primo? Are they prepared to say we've seen enough, moving on? Are they in a position where they're prepared to go after the guy they think is their long-term guy? I don't know. I don't think there's a rush for that for this team, to be honest. I think Monty looks really good and deserves a genuine look. Let's see how he handles it if he's actually the starter. And let's see how Primo handles bright lights of Montreal when he actually knows he's staying as the backup. And God, that might we might be talking about another lottery pick next year, but or we might see what we actually have. And I think they need to see what they actually have in both guys, or take the risk and move on for Primo. That's the other alternative. I don't think Primo's back in Laval next year. I don't think that's happening. So,
really,
yeah, I don't. Yeah.
I could see a situation where he starts in Laval and by midway through the season or trade deadline, he becomes Montembeau's backup if he can put it together. Because, I mean, he's putting it together right now in the American Hockey League. I think he's a good American Hockey League goaltender when his confidence doesn't get shattered, right? But 2 great games in a row to keep Laval in the playoff hunt here. And, yeah, their offense is clicking at the same time, but they wouldn't have beat the Marlies the other night without a great performance from Caden Primo. So
he's had like a 9-18 in March when they're missing all their top players. And I get it there. I'm always the Primo apologist, but there's Samuel Montembeau 3 years ago was not looking like he had an NHL future either.
Right. And that's the question they have for him. Is he waiver eligible next year?
Oh, that's a really good question. I don't know, Lori, is he waiver eligible next year?
I don't.
He's got to be close.
I haven't looked at the goalie situation a lot, but I think Primo has to pass through waivers next year, and I don't think he does because I think he's going to shine in the playoffs if they make it.
Well, one thing that
complicates things.
One thing the chat is saying is that no more. First of all, no more investing in franchise goalies, and I absolutely agree with that. Yep. And one thing that Sojiro is saying, again, slam me with the first comment in our chat, and then mentioning here, Habs definitely need a goalie, but no wasting picks on one or doing crazy trades. I am a huge believer in that.
Yeah,
goalies are like mangoes in India and Pakistan. They're just all over the place, right? So you can pick them up, you can find them for cheap and free, and they're delicious. Well, the mangoes are delicious.
Yeah, I mean, what you do with goaltending throughout the rebuild is you take one every draft in the 5th, 6th, or 7th round, and then you get a bunch of them together, and you hope one of them hits, right?
Like they did with Primo.
Yeah, well, I mean, look what...
Verbetic, they tried to do it, and Dicao, they tried it, yeah.
Yeah, and one of those guys still may, right? But there was a
money,
comment
man.
here
One
from,
out of
I think it was John Paul Murray, saying that goaltending is the icing on a cake for a rebuild. It should come last. And I agree.
Smart. Our
Yeah,
chat, as per
I don't-
usual, very smart.
I don't think that they need to go. You hear lots of talk about them swinging some big deal for Devin Levy, or whoever.
Buffalo would never let him go, though.
I can't
it
see
would
why
take
they
Lane
would.
Hudson and a first-round pick to get Devon Levi.
It would probably take more than
Right.
that.
Yeah, probably.
So, like,
yeah.
or Askarov or Wolf, or I'd love to see them.
Askarov would be fun, though.
Yes, it would be great to see them. I think Askarov has the personality for Montreal, actually.
Right?
Yeah.
I want him to stay in his net a little bit more.
No, absolutely not. Go buck wild. Let's have fun with it.
The fans would love him. Yeah.
Did you see what Swayman did tonight, though, Mark?
When he was playing Red Rover, I call Pitlick over. Yeah.
But that's Askarov like every 5 minutes.
That Jeremy Swayman was a man who was profoundly bored knowing he's not going to play another game for about a month and a half. That's if everything goes to the plan. So yeah.
Yeah, because the Bruins are out in 4.
Oh, you know what, Kate? Why is everyone underrating the team that has had the most success in the history of the NHL? What's going on there? Lori, are the Bruins
because they're the luckiest team in the league by far?
I guess.
They're a good team.
Won the most games in the history of the league, yeah.
They're a good team. But when you watch the Boston Bruins like you did tonight, like we did a few weeks ago against the Canadiens, if you watch them regularly, do you think they're realistically a team that should be controlling like 65% of the goals?
Yes, but everyone has if you watch the locker room clean out exactly 1 year ago last year, you will notice that this guy did not sleep an ounce, like not even a minute, and I was tired and I felt like crap, but that's what happens in Montreal at the end of the season. I have a feeling the Bruins were partying a little bit. Man, I think Boston's just going to dominate the East. I don't know. I feel dirty saying it. Lori, what's your call on this?
I don't know. I think Toronto, this might actually be the year they put it together. I know
it will be
sacrilege. I know that it's not what Habs fans want to hear, but I think this might actually be the year they put it together. Mm-hmm. I think Tampa's vulnerable, and it might not be the worst matchup for the Leafs. If they find themselves against the Bruins, like I said earlier, if there's actually, Bergeron's actually truly injured and not just deciding to take a rest because the game didn't mean anything, that changes the whole dynamic. But if they're healthy, I think that'll be a brilliant series to watch, Toronto-Boston. So I don't know if, it's hard to bet against Boston this year. But it's this year, right? They weren't this is not the team they were last year. And I know that there's some key fixtures that have been added for this season. So I think it's boom or bust with them in some ways, right? That they could just go, burn through it all and win it all for their final, big show. Yeah. Or Toronto might actually get some vengeance against them. That's if anyone, I think if anyone does them in, it might be Toronto.
I mean, it's the least that the Florida Panthers could do after screwing up and making the playoffs and ruining the Canadiens' great Ben Sherratt for Connor Bedard trade potential.
Yeah. I don't even care if it ends up the 32nd pick. That was the best deal in the history of the Montreal Canadiens. I'm sorry. I will die on that hill.
It was a fantastic move from Kent Hughes. And, could have been even more fantastic if the Florida Panthers could be bad for like one extra week this season, or if the Pittsburgh Penguins could just not, completely implode in the second half of the season. Mm-hmm. But I think we probably covered everything that we need to cover from that game. One thing I did want to ask, did you guys watch the game on TSN?
Yeah.
No, I watch it en français all the time.
Okay,
sorry.
So
I just have to.
I don't want to like trash him too much, but Sergio Momesso, when Edmundson had his fight with Greer, he talked about like this could be recompense for Greer slashing Hoffman, and what he said was below the chin. and I just want to ask
Like a
Sergio, what do you think this part of the face is? Because the chin is here. Below the chin would be here. He's not going to wear a shield if he got hit below the chin.
I will say this. I'm not going to criticize Sergio because his hand, I know him quite well. His hand could cover my head like in one fell swoop and he could just toss me. So big Sergio Momesso fan over here, making it official. Love the restaurants. Andrew's banned. No more Momessos for you.
I heard him talking about payback, but I wasn't making the connection. He was talking. It was that it was about Hoffman. He thinks Edmundson was.
Well, no, but that's what it was. That's what it was. Is because when we
Yeah,
had Greer and the face-off,
It seemed like that.
he happy faced Hoffman. It
Yeah.
looks so bad because Hoffman was angry, but there was a scar in the shape of a smile. I thought it was hilarious in a horrible way. Yeah, I'm serious.
Still ridiculous that was only one game.
Right? Absolutely.
It was. Yeah.
No, definitely. And there was a suspension just recently where it was another one of those funny things. Do we there's got to be movement, right, with the Department of Safety at some point? Like,
why would you ever expect the NHL to do something? Come on, Mark.
Yeah,
we all know.
Really fair point. I've done my life being a devil's advocate. That stumped me real good. Damn.
It's like every year, like this year, the officiating will definitely be better, right? And somehow it gets worse. Like this year, they'll clearly define what goaltender interference is, right?
This year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we keep saying like it'll take a big event with somebody.
Pacioretty style event, yeah.
Yeah, like really, I don't know if it's gonna. I don't know if that would make a giant difference, to be honest. That there is a club that sees the volatility of the NHL game being such. It's sacred and it's part of what you sign up for. I don't know that there's a strong will to shift that very much.
No, they have no interest in actually bringing any accountability to the game.
No.
I think the people in charge, they
own a company called Violent Gentlemen. Like,
yeah, I mean, and they see more.
What are we doing here?
I think the NHL cares far more about looking like they care than actually caring. It's the same stuff as like
absolutely.
Hockey is for everyone, right?
Yeah,
they don't actually give a crap about.
As long as you look just like us, hockey's for you. John Paul Murray brings up a good point here, or a question. I'm gonna throw this to Lori. The better trade, Craig Rivet for Josh Georges and a first-round pick. The Canadiens turn around, and that pick was 20. I forget what it was overall. I want to say 26, but it's closer
26,
to 26.
I think.
Oh yeah, for Max Pacioretty. Max Pacioretty ends up being traded eventually for Nick Suzuki. Or, and this is my vote. I think the trade for Ben Sherratt was actually better value overall, even though the Pacioretty thing ended up good. Which one do you think was a better trade, like just on paper?
Hard to evaluate until you know who the pick is.
Oh, she's so smart. It's annoying how smart she is.
It's hard to say. Right now, I would say that I would just because Suzuki's a center and because of who Suzuki is, and how that's worked out, what the fit is like. I would pick that, but I'm wondering why we're not talking about the deal. Was it Dutch Gretzky and
Fleischmann and Weise for Philippe Danault.
Great trade.
The ghost of Thomas Fleischmann, because I swear to God, he just dissipated in the wind after that trade.
That was like in the era of Bergevin turning out bangers, right? Like the Petrie trade.
Boom. He was like Taylor Swift, just knocking them out, banger after banger. Yeah. Absolutely.
And then made a decision to he could have turned that around. Imagine if he had traded Danault at that deadline instead of letting him walk for nothing in the offseason. But he chose
Marc Bergevin with a lack of foresight.
He made that brilliant deal and stole Danault and then
grand larceny.
Made no use of him really at the end of the day. Anyway, that's I would still I like the deal that brought in Suzuki.
Yeah, King of the North brings up what about turning Romanov into Kirby Dach?
That's big.
Like,
That's
Kent
pretty
Hughes
good.
in a year and a bit has churned out some incredible moves.
You know, it's funny because the Tyler Toffoli deal, I look back at it, I'm like, man, that wasn't that great, but it was essentially him signaling. It was kind of like the Phil Kessel trade, right? When Toronto did that, they weren't getting good value, but it was them being like, we need to be bad next year. That would like, because Tyler Toffoli on this team, he would drag, like, he's been pretty good, and it sucks. Like, I was actually speaking to Kat recently. I'm like, it sucks that your husband's not here, but it's really good for the city that he's not here. And she's like, well, that's a shitty thing to say. I'm like, no, because he's good, because he's a good player. So that was, if you look back and you gauge all the trades, that was probably the worst return, but it was necessary for the Canadiens to just be like, all right, let's go. We're making it.
It was ripping the band. Yeah, totally ripping the Band-Aid off fast. I like, it was shocking to me. I remember it was Valentine's Day, I think, and I was sitting in a restaurant at lunch, and the deal broke, and I was shocked that was the first move they made was to move him. And then I thought, this is a big message right here. They're going for it.
As an aside, they real quick, she called Kat and he's like, hey, I'm at the airport, and she's like, cool, what'd you bring with you? And he's like, I have my backpack with like my phone and my charger. And she's like, yeah, but you brought clothes with you to your new city. And he's like, Kat, can you bring clothes to my new city for me? Classic Tyler.
Yeah, everyone's talking about the draft, and the lottery coming up soon, and that's all going to be fun. I think it's going to be a summer of a couple of enormous trades for Canadiens.
So
that will define.
They've been angling towards it the whole season, essentially.
Yeah, I think it's going to be huge, and I think it's possible that one of them comes perhaps before too long.
Well, you're the smartest person here by a country mile, so I'm going to go ahead and agree with you, just so I look smart too.
Maybe John Paul Murray brought up the original trade that brought Weise to Montreal. And he says, no one bring it up. It's a soft spot for Andrew. Listen.
He's going to look like, I've heard this defense so many times.
It's not even a defense, because the fact is, you can go back and look at everything. I was right at the time, and I maintain that I'm still right. Dale Weise, just because Michel Therrien decided he needed to play with Max Pacioretty on the top line and score at a frickin' 10-goal pace on the top line, on the top power play unit, does not mean he was a good player on the Montreal Canadiens.
That was bizarre.
Yes, he scored a couple of fantastic goals in the playoffs.
Oh my God, and he made it fun versus Boston. Like, he made that
series
fun.
He was a great personality. But trading Rafael Diaz forced Douglas Murray to play a full-time role that year, and Douglas Murray is the worst defenseman I have ever watched play in the NHL.
To Grant. Andrew got it wrong for the right reasons. Benjamin got it right for the wrong reasons. That's how that worked out. He didn't get it
right. That's the thing. Like, everyone saw Rafael Diaz and they're like, oh yeah, he's got a big shot. He's an offensive defenseman. But if you actually look at him, he was a crazy good defensive defenseman.
He really was, yeah.
And, Calgary couldn't figure out a way to play him. Montreal couldn't figure out a way to play him. I think he could have had a longer NHL career, but it wasn't about just Rafael Diaz for Dale Weise. It was about the cascade of what would happen to that defense group, and the fact is they were crap after that because they were playing Bouillon and Murray on the third pair.
Oh yeah, I agree. But Andrew's tombstone will have, okay, listen, it's going to be this big paragraph like I never said.
People think I'm in love with Rafael Diaz. Like, no, he was just better than Douglas Murray.
Yeah, and having Douglas Murray on your roster is actually a much bigger drag than Dale Weise, who I know he's a great story, but statistically speaking, he was just barely above replacement. And Andrew, I'm not even sure if he actually was above replacement, statistically speaking. Great story, but yeah.
I mean, when you play with Max Pacioretty in his prime, he'll drag you above replacement because he was a possession driving monster, right? And to a lesser extent, like David Desharnais, he did good things for Dale Weise as well. Like the playmaking was great. So I don't know if he was actually below replacement as a Hab, but when he wasn't with Pacioretty, he was.
It's hard to be below replacement with Pacioretty,
although,
but as Lori
he was pretty
up,
good with Briere in the playoffs.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, you know what? And Dale Weise just kind of embraced the whole hockey's got to be fun, and we have to have storylines, and like he drove Milan Lucic crazy.
He did.
And I will say this: in the Laval Rocket locker room, well, I struggled with that one a lot. He was the guy, and I can't quote any of it because it was always like off the record. He had a lot to say. He's one of those guys that, man, I should call Dale Weise actually on that note. He's got a lot to say about Marc Bergevin. I really need to and Michel Terrien, our favorite coach.
Yes, he's been fairly public about and about the Rocket coach then Bouchard. He's had lots to say about him as well.
You should try to get Dale on the show, and
entirely.
he can give it to me like I gave it to him, because I don't mind that.
Exactly.
If he wants to
It's time
call
for
me an
Andrew to take
idiot,
some
that's
hits
great.
here. Yeah. Although John Paul Murray, I believe he even mentioned at the beginning of the chat, followed us from EOTP, so he knows all our buttons to hit here. He knows exactly what buttons to hit. Fortunately, he can't hit any buttons with Lori because she's just smart and she doesn't make those same mistakes.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, John Paul, my blood pressure's fine. Don't worry.
Yeah. Mine is elevated, but it's because my doctors are like, oh, you can't keep drinking gravy, dicks.
That's Quebecois culture.
Yeah, like, yeah. I start right away. I jump into the joie there. I become Acadian on the spot. One thing that John Paul Murray mentions is that Douglas Murray had the best nickname in the history of nicknames.
Pylon?
Crankshaft.
Lori with the dagger. Just with the dagger. I have my hunting knife here somewhere. I was just sharpening it. Lori just goes right in. No, crankshaft, which is just fantastic as well. Pylon.
Oh my god.
Yeah, he was
Evan
big
B says, "What about Alexei Emelin?" To me, I don't know. I don't have any very large things to say about Alexei Emelin.
I think that the most beautiful thing with him is that he reinvigorated my love for the hip check.
Yeah.
Seriously, it was so
hitter.
like 80s baby, double stacked pad saves and hip checks. That's all I really want in this life. And the best hit in the history of the NHL, other than when Larry Robinson hit Gary Dornhofer against the boards and they had to come out and hammer the boards back in place, was when Emelin hit Eric Cole. Do you remember that? Second
Yes.
Cole reference. Second Eric
And he
Cole
went
reference.
like 10 feet in the air.
So there's a song on a movie called Quigley Down Under. Okay, I'm getting really deep here. And I wanted to make a whole highlight about that one hit. There's a 4-minute like song where it's like a whole chorus. I'm gonna get back to that. Thank you for reminding me about projects that I wanted to start in 2007.
I mean, you're going to get in trouble with people for saying that hit was better than PK Subban on Marchand.
No, that was stealing someone's soul. That's completely different.
It's not a hit anymore. Yeah, I mean, I love the CBC broadcast of that hit because as he connects, the sound cuts out and it's like there was a...
That's the sound of Marchand's soul being like...
It's just a sonic boom.
Yeah,
exactly. No, exactly. Hey, Lori, what are you thinking for next year? Because we're wrapping up here pretty soon. By the way, shout out to the chat. Again, they've been absolutely amazing, and they're dealing... Yeah, I already got called out for not talking about Subban Marchand. Lori, next year, are we in for more of the same? Because I think I have a different view than most people. I think there's another 2 or 3 years of pain here. To quote the Wu-Tang Clan, bring on the pain. I think that's what we're going to get to. What's your outlook?
I think a lot depends on what happens in the offseason, obviously. But I think one of the pitfalls that we could fall into is that we think because of a couple big trades that I do expect to happen, that they're suddenly going to be playoff contenders, and I don't think that's necessarily going to be the case. I think they will be set up to be. I think they will be good trades, even if they don't make the playoffs, and I think it's very possible they won't, because I'm not sure the defense group is changing a lot next year. I think there will be some subtraction, but I'm not sure we're going to get that. As you said, if they bring in someone, it's not going to be an $8 million guy. It'll be someone that's a number 4. And so they'll have some veteran support. They'll have a chance to play more like where they are. But I think the defense group will still be in development and still growing. And for that reason, I don't think they're going to suddenly be playoff bound next year. They probably will be, getting the 5th overall placement, but I don't think they're playoff bound.
You're a little more bullish on the Habs, right?
I think they get into like 80-point territory next
without
year.
A historically bad season on injuries. Is that?
I think we'll probably see a little bit more health. I think for me, it's less like, are they going to be a playoff team next year? No. The year after, I would also guess no. And if they do make it, it's probably like a bit of a fluke, if you understand. Like,
Yeah.
it's not like them being
The
ready
Atlantic
to compete.
is strong, man. Remy's mentioning in the chat, like the Atlantic is really strong right now.
It is
Yeah.
really strong. I mean, the teams that they have to fight through, you basically have to hope that Boston falls off immediately after this
It's
year.
about
Where
damn time. I waited for the Red
they
Sox
do
for like
need
20
to fall
years.
off. Come
Yeah,
on,
man.
but like I think that it's not gonna be as painful, right? Because
No.
you know that they're still rebuilding,
Mhm.
but they're gonna be more entertaining. And Kay asked a great question here.
It's a fan. Kay is such a good producer. No joke.
I know,
work
right?
with highly paid producers, and right now they'd be sending me a message, Mark, focus on what's important. And Kay always does that. Shout out to Kay and my old producers.
Yeah, Kay asked each of us what our favorite moments of this season were. I'll lead off because I think it's easy. For me, it was Caulfield tying the game in Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
That was just hype. And I remember
Tortorella
coming in.
was smiling. Was that the one where Tortorella was smiling?
Yeah, like even he couldn't believe it. Like
Right?
he couldn't even be mad because it was
he
so
cracked
cool,
Tortorella's
right?
cold, dead heart there. Like,
Yeah. So that was my favorite moment of the season. And I remember I was on that show, I believe, with Ian Boisvert, and the chat was just pumping. And I love when people get hyped up and you can feel it. Like in Montreal, it's like an electricity in the air when people believe in the Montreal Canadiens. So that early season hope that was there when they were just playing like crazy, overperforming, and everyone knew it was going to fall off. But there was a part of you that was like, oh, maybe. That was super fun. Lori?
You, Lori?
Two return to your former team moments. Monahan going back to Calgary and having a big game. But yes, the other one that tops that is Doc's shootout winner. Beautiful, felt really good for the kid, like that he was getting that moment after being, given up on by the team that drafted him.
Yeah.
And to have that moment, beautiful. And a lot of fun.
And he was pissed off about that. Like Tim Turk mentioned it. Like he was and he was happy that he was coming to Montreal. He's like, I'm going to prove them wrong in a big market. So there's been so many failures of players transitioning to Montreal that I know we've talked a lot about Doc, but man, his story just on its own has been so rare in Montreal that you have that transition that it works out. For me, and I know I'll be accused of favoritism here, and it's absolutely true, but it was seeing two guys in particular make their mark. The first one is Alex Belzil. And the reason I say this is because he's probably the guy I've spoken to, other than Jake Evans, the most in my career. And every time you had to talk to someone in Laval, they'd come up to him and be like, well, you're never going to make the NHL, but you're acting as a mentor for these guys. How does it feel? And he's like, it feels shitty that you just said that. Like he hated that, but he maintained a positive attitude. And seeing him score his first goal, man, at 31 years old, like that's the stuff that the reason we watch sports. That's the reason that we bother tuning in year to year. And, for a guy that comes from a place that has 282 people, like a guy that came from a place where he used to imitate Alex Kovalev, and he ended up being the opposite of Alex Kovalev, but he scored his damn goal in the NHL. And that to me was really cool. I'll admit it. And the other one is obviously Raphaël Harvey-Pinard, emerging in a situation where he probably should have had an opportunity beforehand, but he didn't just take the ball by the horns. Like he full out Grogu'd that bull. Like he just, he dominated. And to see a guy like Raphaël Harvey-Pinard finally have an opportunity to prove his worth, that to me, again, is the reason we watch hockey. We're talking about lottery odds, Andrew. We talked about so many technical things this year. We watch this damn sport because it's fun, because there's cool stories. And this year, even though it was tough, it was frustrating, we were blessed with a lot of great stories, from Arbor Jacki making the jump, from Cole Caulfield, scoring all those goals, from Nick Suzuki just defying the plague. It's been a fun season with Samuel Montembeault being dominant as well. But when it comes down to it, I got to say my two boys from the AHL, it's got to be Alex Belzil and Raphaël Harvey-Pinard. And I know for a fact, Kat agrees with me in the chat.
No, Kat said her favorite moment was Kirby Doc's return.
No, that was Kay or Kat?
Oh, no, not Kat. Sorry, Kay. I was making a mistake there. But,
Kat knows her QJMHL history there. So if you want a really good prospect report, go ask Kat. Sometimes Jerome, but he's not as good as Kat. I'll be honest. I'm sorry, Jerome.
Oh, it's that Kat.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Very knowledgeable about hockey, Kat. Yes, exactly.
Yes, she's great.
And as ZSSIK means, let's be perfectly honest, when Arbor Jacki stole Zach Cassian's soul,
That was great.
How many of us lived by like that was, listen,
Beautiful.
I don't know how to express it, but like, there's a gif of a kid watching a soccer game at, like, he's like 5 years old and he's like, yeah. That's how every single Habs fan felt, because it was kind of a changing of the guard, right, for the Habs.
Yeah.
So yeah, stealing Cassian's soul has to be right up there.
Yeah, 100%. There was a lot of great moments this year. Just like there was a lot of great moments last year. 82 games, you're going to get something to talk about, right? And we've talked this season to death. I think I always struggle the last episode to actually end it, because I know that we're going to be going away for a bit. And I know I'm going to miss this feeling, but we can't go on forever. Everyone has to go to sleep at some point. I will say one last, just try not to get emotional, but thank you to everyone who tunes into this show,
really appreciate
who comes and hangs out with us live, especially. You are the beating heart behind this all. Thank you for allowing us to build this Game Over brand and expand across Canada. Make sure that you pick a bandwagon among our Canadian teams, whether it's Winnipeg, Edmonton, or no, probably not Toronto, but you can pick Toronto if you really want, but pick one of the other ones instead. Maybe pick Edmonton.
Oilers.
They're the best shot.
Yeah.
I'll be picking Edmonton for sure, but I'll be supporting our Winnipeg friends as well, Alyssa and Brady. But I can't even express in words how much it means to me that so many people come here as regulars, who come here every show and to chat with us and give us ideas to talk about. And our lovely guests like Lori. I'd rattle off all the guests, but I'll be here another 20 minutes.
Lori is the best of the best.
Exactly, right? So thank you to Lori. Before we close out our final show of the year, well, before the draft lottery, where we'll open up a Zoom room so that our friends in the chat can jump in and be on camera.
Right?
Or, maybe a live event at a certain venue in Montreal.
Maybe keep an eye out for the draft lottery and keep that night open. And if you can come to Montreal that day, it would be a really good idea, but we don't want to leak it too early because someone might interfere. Maybe.
Yes,
maybe.
Someone who maybe interfered in our last proposed live
Maybe.
event.
We don't know
from
who.
the NHL.
We don't know who, though.
But that'll be May 8th. So mark that day in your calendar. We'll be doing something special, I promise.
Sorry, Andrew, real quick. Noel, remember the dogs only episode where we just talked about dogs the entire time?
Yeah, we talked about how everybody had that dog in them, and then we went through every single Habs player and decided what breed of dog they were. Yeah.
I'll be going to bed and I remember that kind of stuff and it makes me happy. Like
I remember when I called Matheson Rhodesian Ridgeback and you got so excited. You're like, that's my favorite dog.
Really? Okay, I almost did it again there. Thank you for reminding me. I've already done it. But yeah, our guests have been amazing and our community is what makes this show special. It is
fantastic. I love you all, and I love the stupid crap we talk about and the interesting crap that we talk about and this crappy team that we talk about. It's super fun. I have to say, doing this show has kind of reinvigorated my fandom from a place where it was very much like I was coming in here as like a third person to bounce ideas off. And all last year people were like, well, you got to advocate for the Habs more if you're having guests from opposing teams. And I was like, do I? But I tried doing that a little bit more this year, and I am falling in love with the team. I gotta say, it, as bad as they are, and as bad as the injury situation was, they're fun. They are fun. They're trying hard. They're building something cool. So let's all fall in love together. Before we close things out, Lori, tell everybody where they can find your work.
Lori 10 Habs on Twitter. I post everything there. I'm a writer for Rec House Press. I have a weekly column there. It's a general sports column. And habatter.ca. You can find my thoughts about the Habs.
There you go. All right, everyone. It's tough to say, hit that outro button, but we got to do it.
Moi, merci.
Exactly.
Merci beaucoup. On vous aime.
Je t'aime. Bonsoir. We'll see you next season, or May 8th. May 8th, mark that in your calendar.
Bye, Claire. Bye.
Have fun
Bye,
watching
Claire.
the playoffs.
Powered by Sports Interaction, Canada Sportsbook.